I came home this past week for a funeral, but let's backtrack a little. My senior year of high school, I spent most of my study hall in the library, working on computer science assignments. My laptop at home didn't have JCreator, so I had to use the school computers. That's where I met him. He was tall, unnaturally so. His skin was pale, almost sickly, and his long black hair fell over one eye. He always wore the same ripped jean jacket, Doc Martens, and an old faded anti-flag t-shirt. He never talked to anyone, never sat with anyone, never even seemed to acknowledge anyone existed. That day, I sat next to him, because those were the only two computers with JCreator installed. The moment I did, he looked up at me, no, through me, like I had just committed some terrible crime. I swallowed hard and quickly dug through my bag, pretending to be busy. As I kept my head down, I heard something. A low chuckle, then a mumble. I froze. For a second, I told myself he was just talking to his computer. Coding can be frustrating after all. Trying to shake off the creeping unease, I logged in and, in an attempt to break the awkward silence, muttered, "She assigns way too much homework. I can barely keep up." His eyes stayed glued to the screen. Then in a slow, measured voice, he said, "You want the answers, don't you?" I forced a laugh. "No thanks. I won't learn anything that way. The truth." Normally I would have said yes. But something about the way he was looking at me, that stare, made my stomach twist. It was too intense, too deep, like he could see something inside me I didn't even know was there. Then he laughed again, a sound so unsettling, so wrong, that I had to close my eyes for a second, just to shake off the chill creeping up my spine. When I opened them, he was gone. His chair was empty. No footsteps, no sound of the door opening or closing. He had just vanished, but he had left something behind. A flash drive. It was one of those Swiss Army knife flash drives, with a fold-out blade and tiny screwdriver tools attached. It looked expensive. I figured he'd come back for it, so I waited. 5 minutes, 10, nothing. Study hall ended, and I still hadn't seen him. I shoved the flash drive into my bag, planning to return it to him in class the next day, but he never came back. At first, no one really noticed. He was notorious for skipping school. But when May rolled around and we were all preparing to graduate, it hit me. He never came back at all. I forgot about the flash drive until 2 days ago. I'd come home for a funeral and needed a flash drive for a PowerPoint. That's when I remembered. I plugged it into my laptop. Norton scanned it. All safe. I was about to wipe it clean when curiosity got the better of me. I started looking through his files. The first folder was called Computer Science. Every single assignment we'd ever had was in there, complete with answers. Maybe that's why he left it, I thought. Maybe he wanted me to cheat off him. Maybe he knew he was never coming back. The second folder was labeled Music. I expected something heavy, maybe death metal or some obscure industrial band. Instead, there were only 3 songs, Running on Empty, Jackson Browne, White Rabbit, Jefferson Airplane, Helter Skelter, The Beatles' Weird. But not that weird. Then I saw a third folder, untitled. Inside were a bunch of school assignments, mostly AP Lit essays. But at the bottom there was a single document named The Best. I clicked on it. It was a scanned notebook page, 10 pages. To be exact, every inch of them was filled with his first and last name, handwritten over and over, hundreds of times, thousands. I felt my pulse quicken. Backing out, I saw another folder. This one had pictures. The first was of the emergency escape plan, posted on the doors of every classroom. The second, a lit cigarette on the bathroom floor. The third, a pile of coins, with a yellow sticky note next to them that said, "Chump Chain," in all caps. Then came the last image, a picture of me. I was sitting in English class, reading a book, but he had never been in my English class. How did he take this photo? My stomach twisted into knots. I clicked on the last file, a document named Rest in Peace 2. I opened it. It was empty. I don't know if this was some sick joke. Maybe he just forgot about his flash drive and never came back for it. Or maybe he left it for me on purpose. This happened a few years ago when my best friend Allie and I were just 12. We had been inseparable since second grade, spending every weekend together, and we shared one obsession: ghost hunting. We were convinced that every house we stepped into had some kind of paranormal presence. We even mimicked the ghost hunting TV shows, using an old flip phone to record EVPs, electronic voice phenomena. But there's one night, one terrifying night, that still haunts me to this day. It was a typical weekend, and like most kids our age, we were wide awake at midnight, fueled by excitement and sugar. That night, we decided to investigate my house, a place we'd always suspected might be haunted. My house was old, really old, and its basement was the stuff of nightmares. Unlike modern basements, this one had a strange layout. The stairs led down to a large, cluttered storage area, and further in, there was a medium-sized laundry room. But at the very back, past all the other rooms, was a tiny, cold space. A dark, cell-like room that no one in my family ever used. No one liked going in there. Armed with our flip phone and my dad's touchscreen camera, we made our way down the creaky stairs. The air felt thick, heavier than usual. We hit record and started asking the usual ghost hunting questions. Is there anybody here? Give us a sign if you're with us. The silence in that basement was suffocating. There was no response, no strange noises, nothing. After about 10 minutes of questioning, we got bored and headed back upstairs, buzzing with excitement over our first real ghost hunting footage. Once in my room, we eagerly watched the video. But our excitement quickly turned to disappointment. There was nothing. No eerie whispers, no flickering lights. Just two kids talking to empty air. Normally we would convince ourselves that we heard something, just to make the experience feel worth it. But this time, we didn't even try. It was just boring. A couple of hours passed and we still weren't tired. So on a whim, we decided to watch the video again. The moment we pressed play, something felt wrong. It was an overwhelming, gut-wrenching feeling, like the air around us had changed. The energy from the recording was different now, heavy and oppressive. And then we heard it, faint but unmistakable. Footsteps, not ours. We rewound the tape, turning the volume all the way up. There it was again, slow, deliberate footsteps echoing through the basement, growing louder. Our hearts pounded. We hadn't heard them when we were down there, and then we saw it. The camera had been pointed at Allie, who stood in the middle of the room, talking to the unseen presence. But behind her, just barely visible in the shadows, was a figure. Not a person, not an animal, something else. It had a twisted, almost human shape, like it had once been a person but had been warped. Its limbs were too long, its posture unnatural. But the worst part? Its eyes, two glowing white orbs staring straight at the camera, watching us. We screamed and shut the video off. For a moment, neither of us could speak. The room felt suffocating, as if something had followed us upstairs. We wanted to tell my dad, but it was too late. He was fast asleep, so we did the only thing we could. We pretended it never happened. Neither of us ever went back into that basement again. We never told anyone what we saw, but sometimes, late at night, Allie and I still talk about it. And worse, sometimes we dream about it. I don't know if we imagined it, if it was some trick of the camera, or if something was truly down there with us. But I do know one thing. I will never go back into that basement. Ever. Halloween night, 2014. My name is Max, and I come from a small town in Findlay, Ohio. I went to Van Buren High School, a quiet place in a village where most people were good, for the most part. But like any small town, there were dark corners, places where people whispered about things that lurked beneath the surface. The biggest hotspot for trouble. Van Buren State Park. Everyone knew the park had a reputation. Murmurs of Assaults, disappearances, and worse haunted its history, but for my friends and me it was nothing more than an urban legend. We had spent countless summers there, biking the trails, fishing in the lake, setting off fireworks in the woods. Nothing bad had ever happened to us, until that night. It was my senior year. That summer I had enlisted in the Army National Guard, so staying in shape was a priority. That afternoon I called my best friend, Ian, and asked if he wanted to run the trails with me after school. He agreed. He liked to keep in shape, too. At around 4 p.m. I pulled into one of the park's nearly empty parking lots, waiting for Ian. That's when I saw him, a silver car, an older model. Inside, a bald man with a face that made my skin crawl. There was something deeply unsettling about him. Not just his appearance, but the way he stared. His eyes were wide, locked on to me, as if he was studying me or hunting me. He didn't blink. He didn't look away. And then he nodded. Not a friendly nod, not a casual one. It was slow, deliberate, a silent acknowledgement, as if he was letting me know he saw me, that I saw him. I nodded back, more out of reflex than anything, then quickly broke eye contact. But in my peripheral vision, I could still see him, still staring. At that moment, I felt it. Dread. I didn't wait. I put my car in gear and pulled out of the lot. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, my stomach dropped. The silver car was following me. I didn't hesitate. I floored it, heading straight for my high school parking lot, weaving through traffic until I lost him. My heart was hammering in my chest as I grabbed my phone and called Ian. "Dude, I don't think we should run today," I told him. "Some creep just followed me from the park. You might have to deal with this alone." Then I saw Ian's text pop up. Here, my heart sank. I drove back, telling myself maybe the guy had left. But the second I pulled in, I saw Ian's car, and 2 spaces away, the silver car, he was still there, still staring. I motioned for Ian to follow me, and we left that parking lot, heading to another one deeper in the park. For a few moments, we thought we had lost him. We got out of our cars and walked down a hill toward the trail. The wind was still, the trees around us eerily silent. I don't like running with things in my pockets, so we started heading back up to leave some stuff in the car. That's when we saw it, the silver car. Circling. The driver's seat was empty now, somewhere out there. He was looking for us. We crouched low, watching as the car moved slowly, methodically. He hadn't seen us, but he was searching. I gripped a rock in my hand, my pulse thudding in my ears. We waited. Minutes passed. Then the car disappeared into the trees. Had he given up? Had he found someone else? I'll never know. We ran the trails that evening, but I never let go of the rock. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see that bald head peering at us from the trees. Every rustling branch felt like footsteps. Every shadow felt like him. Even now, years later, I still drive by that park when I visit home. Sometimes I stop and just watch. I never go unarmed, and I never stay too long, because I know one day I might see him again, and this time he might not let me get away. In my bedroom, right next to my bed, there's a large storage closet. But unlike a normal closet with a handle or hinges, this one has a strange, square-shaped door that simply rests against the opening. No knobs, no locks, just a removable panel that fits snugly into the wall. Rewind to when I was 19, the first time it happened. One morning I woke up and noticed something odd. The closet door, which I had securely placed the night before, was no longer in its usual position. Instead, it was leaning against the wooden edge of my bed. At first, I didn't think much of it. Sometimes the door would shift out of place, since it wasn't attached to anything. I simply lifted it and pressed it back into the wall before getting ready for school. That night, around 4 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Something had disturbed me, though I couldn't pinpoint what. My room was completely silent, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw it. The closet door had fallen open again, resting against my bed. A small chill ran through me. but I reassured myself that maybe the edges of the closet frame were wearing down, making the door less secure. Still, I left it like that until morning. The following night, I struggled to sleep. 2 hours passed as I tossed and turned, unable to get comfortable. That's when I heard it thump. The sound was unmistakable. I didn't need to look. I already knew. The closet door had fallen open again. Frustrated, I decided I'd had enough. Fine, I thought. Let it stay open. And then, barely noticeable, but distinct, the faintest rustling sound came from inside the closet. It was the sound of plastic shifting. I froze. My pulse pounded in my ears. My room had no windows open, no fan, no breeze. That sound should not have happened. Slowly, I reached out and flicked on the light switch. As the room filled with light, my worst fear became reality. Inside the closet, a pair of eyes stared back at me. A man was crouched inside, peering at me through the darkness. For a fraction of a second, neither of us moved. Then, as if trying to pretend he wasn't there, he quickly shrank back, pushing himself deeper into the shadows. I couldn't breathe. My body refused to move, but my voice worked. I screamed. "Dad!" The panic in my voice must have been pure terror because within seconds, I heard my father's heavy footsteps pounding down the hall. He burst into my room, and with a shaking finger, I pointed at the closet. He didn't hesitate. He stormed over and yanked the door open fully, but the man was gone. I didn't understand. I had seen him. He was there. Still, my dad stepped inside, crawling into the space, searching every dark corner. But there was nothing, no one. Eventually, he turned back to me, trying to reassure me that I must have imagined it, that it was just shadows playing tricks on my mind. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, but deep down, something didn't feel right. That night, I refused to sleep in my room. I curled up on the floor of my parents' bedroom with a blanket, my heart still racing from the fear. Then, just as I started to calm down, creak rake, the distant sound of my bedroom door slowly opening, and then footsteps, fast, running. From down the hall, someone sprinted down the stairs and out the front door, slamming it shut. Behind them, my parents shot up, now fully awake. We rushed downstairs, but by the time we got to the front door, it was too late. Whoever had been in my room was gone. Later, we searched the closet again. That's when we found it, an empty plastic storage bin, just big enough for someone to hide inside. The lid had been carefully placed over it, leaving no trace that anyone had ever been there. Someone had been living in my closet, watching me sleep, and I had no idea. I was a junior in high school when Justin joined 2 of my classes midway through the semester. One day, he was just there, sitting in the empty seat beside me. I hadn't heard about a transfer student, and he didn't talk much about himself. He said he had moved from a school I'd never heard of, but beyond that, he didn't share much. Justin was odd, not in a dangerous way, just a little awkward, a little too eager to talk, even when I wasn't in the mood. Still, I was polite, and since we had 2 classes together, I became one of the few people he talked to. A couple of weeks after he arrived, he invited me over to his house. He was persistent, and though I wasn't particularly interested, I figured I might as well hang out with him once. So that evening, I drove to his house. It was in a rough neighborhood, run-down houses, cracked sidewalks, a few dim porch lights flickering in the distance. I parked, texted Justin that I had arrived, and waited. No response. After a minute, I got out and knocked on the door. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. "Come in." The door was unlocked. Inside, the house was dark. No hallway light, no sound of family members. Just an eerie silence broken only by a faint noise, a TV or a video game humming from somewhere deep inside. Then I saw it, a basement door, slightly ajar. The sound was coming from below. I called out Justin's name, no response, but the sound, low voices, gunfire, was unmistakable. He had to be down there, probably playing Call of Duty or something. Something about it felt wrong. Still, I stepped forward. The basement was pitch black. As I descended, the sounds grew louder, but the darkness remained absolute. No glow of a screen, no movement, just noise. Then, a shove, hard. I hit the ground, pain shooting through my hands and knees. Laughter echoed through the darkness, low, amused, but not quite right. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding. Another shove. This time I fell harder, my knee slamming against the cold floor. More laughter. Then, a kick. My leg burned where the foot connected. I gasped, pushing myself up. I couldn't see them. I couldn't see anything. Another movement. More laughter. I bolted. Blindly, I stumbled through the dark, arms outstretched, crashing into walls. My only goal, to reach the stairs. Behind me, footsteps. I tripped, caught myself, lunged forward. My hands found the railing. I sprinted up, skipping steps, nearly falling again until I was out. I didn't stop running until I was in my car, doors locked, tires screeching as I sped away. At home, I texted Justin. What the hell was that? No response. Monday came. He was in class, but he didn't acknowledge me. No greeting, no annoying small talk, just silent. A few days later, he was gone. No explanation, no rumor, just gone. I never found out what happened in that basement, and I don't think I want to. This happened back when I was in high school. I was a senior at the time, and every day, school let out at exactly 2:40 p.m. The campus would erupt into chaos, hallways jam-packed with students scrambling to escape, the main entrance bottlenecked with bodies, and the parking lot filled with the honking of impatient drivers trying to leave. But one particular day was different. I had an advanced class during the final period, a small one with only 15 students. That day, we had a major test, our only assignment for the day. As soon as I finished, my teacher told us that if we drove ourselves to school, we were free to leave early. This was rare. Most teachers wouldn't let you out before the final bell, even if there was nothing left to do. I wasn't going to question it, though. I finished my test 10 minutes before the usual dismissal time, grabbed my things, and left. The halls were eerily empty. No students, no noise, just the distant hum of the janitor's cart rolling somewhere down the corridor. It felt strange, like I was walking through an abandoned version of my school. When I stepped into the parking lot, the silence hit me even harder. Normally there were hundreds of students rushing to their cars, the air filled with laughter, shouting, and the occasional engine revving. But today, it was just me. As I walked toward my car, I glanced around, and then I saw him. At the farthest corner of the lot, where a small wooded area bordered the school grounds, a man stood half hidden behind a tree. He was tall, wearing dark sunglasses, and dressed in ordinary clothes. But something about him was off. He was too old to be a student, too still to be someone just passing by, and the way he was positioned, almost like he had just stepped out of the woods, sent a shiver through me. I stopped in my tracks, staring at him. He didn't move. Then in one slow, deliberate motion, he shifted behind the tree, disappearing from sight. I hesitated for only a second before hurrying to my car. Once inside, I locked the doors, started the engine, and drove home. I told myself it was nothing, just some random guy, maybe a janitor, maybe someone's parent. I didn't let myself dwell on it until the next day. This time, I left the school at the usual time, surrounded by the usual chaos. Hundreds of students poured into the lot, voices overlapping, cars honking. But as I walked toward my car, a memory from the previous afternoon surfaced, the man in the woods. Curious, I turned my head, scanning the trees. He was there, the same exact spot, the same sunglasses, the same unsettling stillness. But this time, I knew to look for him, and it made me realize just how well hidden he was. If I hadn't already known where to look, I might have never noticed him. A chill crept down my spine. I kept walking, forcing myself not to panic, but I could feel his gaze locked onto me. Just before I reached my car, he shifted again, vanishing behind the tree like before. Who was he? That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I barely slept. The next day, when I left the school, I instinctively glanced toward the woods. Nothing. He was gone. Relief flooded me, and for a moment I convinced myself that it was all just a weird coincidence. Maybe he had just been a random guy hanging out for some reason. Maybe I had overreacted. Then, 2 days later, something even stranger happened. I was driving home when I noticed a car behind me. A small black sedan. I hadn't thought anything of it at first, until I realized it had been following me for a while. Not tailgating, not driving aggressively, just there. Something felt wrong. I glanced in my rearview mirror. The driver was wearing sunglasses. My stomach dropped. Was it him? I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was just paranoia. But as I turned onto the road leading into my quiet neighborhood, the car followed. Turn after turn, street after street. By the time I reached my house, my pulse was hammering. I pulled into the driveway, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The black sedan didn't stop. It kept driving, disappearing down the road. I sat there for a long moment, trying to steady my breathing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then that night, everything changed. I was sitting at my desk in my bedroom, scrolling through my phone. My window faced the front yard, giving me a clear view of the street outside. That's when I saw him. He was walking down my street, slowly, and he was looking at my house. My breath caught in my throat. My body went cold. I recognized him instantly. The man from the woods. The man in the black sedan. I expected the man to be gone. He wasn't. He was still there, walking past our house. Slowly, deliberately, then without hesitation, my dad yanked open the front door and stormed outside. I couldn't hear what he said, but his voice was sharp, angry. The man turned his head toward him. Then he ran. He sprinted down the street and vanished into the night. My dad tried to chase him, but the man was too fast. By the time my dad returned, he was breathless and frustrated, but he looked at me with absolute seriousness. "You did the right thing telling us," he said. "That guy wasn't just some random person. I reported everything to my school the next day. I never saw the man again. He never showed up at school, never followed me home, never walked past my house. But I always wondered if I hadn't seen him that night, watching from the street, what would have happened?" I was a freshman in high school when this happened. My older brother and I both played sports, but different ones, so we often had practices at different times. He usually gave me a ride to school and back home. One evening, a couple of months into the school year, I finished my practice early, around 5 p.m., but my brother's practice was still going. All my teammates had already left, except for one of my close friends, Jack, who was also waiting for his older brother to finish practice. With nothing else to do, we decided to explore. The school had been empty for hours by then, silent, almost too quiet. We wandered through the dimly lit hallways, talking and killing time. Despite being freshmen, we knew most of the school well, but that day, we found something neither of us had ever seen before. It was an old staircase, hidden behind a set of heavy wooden doors. One of them was slightly ajar. The sight of it gave me an uneasy feeling, but curiosity got the best of us. Jack and I exchanged a glance before stepping inside. The stairs led down into what we could only assume was the school's basement. I had no idea the school even had one. As we descended, the air grew stale, thick with dust, and something else I couldn't quite place. The walls were old, the paint peeling. Most of the lights were off, but we managed to find a switch that illuminated a single flickering row of bulbs. The basement was just one long hallway, with several closed doors lining the sides. Storage, probably. We whispered to each other. our voices sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet. It was eerie, but more than that, something felt wrong down there. Then we heard it. A door creaked open at the far end of the hallway. We both froze. I felt a chill crawl up my spine as a figure stepped out of one of the rooms. It was a man, someone we didn't recognize. He wasn't a janitor. He wasn't wearing any uniform or ID badge. Just a plain t-shirt, jeans, and a blank expression. His hair was cut short, almost military style. For a few long seconds, none of us moved. We just stared at each other. Then, without warning, the man took a step forward, then another. He walked toward us with a strange, almost deliberate pace. Too fast to be casual, too slow to be a run. His eyes locked onto us, his face void of emotion. Then he spoke. "Come here." His voice was low, commanding. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. Jack must have felt the same way because we didn't even think. We turned and bolted up the stairs. My heart pounded as we ran, expecting at any second to hear the man's footsteps chasing after us. But he never did. We reached the top, slammed the door shut behind us, and ran as far as we could from that hallway. For the next 20 minutes, we wandered the school, trying to process what had just happened. Who was that man, and why was he down there? Curiosity got the better of us. We decided to go back, not into the basement, just to check if the door was still open. But when we returned, both doors were shut. I reached for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. Jack and I stared at each other, silently agreeing that we were done with whatever this was. We hurried back to the gym and waited for our brothers to finish practice. I never saw that man again. I never found out what he was doing down there, and I never went back. But for the rest of my time at that school, one thought stayed with me. Who locked the door? And more importantly, why? I was a junior in high school when this happened. My school was big. So big that sometimes you could go all day without seeing certain classmates. Each grade had its own locker section, and the juniors had theirs near the science department. It was a busy area, often packed with students squeezing past each other, making it hard to even open our lockers. But in between the rushes, there were quiet moments when the hallway felt almost deserted. It was during one of these quiet times that I first saw him. I was at my locker, grabbing my books between classes, when I noticed him standing nearby. He wasn't someone I recognized. Tall, older looking. His posture was strange, too still, too focused. He was watching me. Then, as if deciding something, he stepped closer. "Hey," he said casually. I hesitated. Something about him felt off. Before I could respond, he launched into conversation, asking me if I wanted to skip class and leave school with him. The suggestion caught me completely off guard. I didn't even know this guy, and skipping school? That wasn't me. I forced a polite but firm smile. "No, I have class. You should probably get to yours, too." He didn't seem deterred. "We can just hang out after school then." "No, I'm busy." I turned back to my locker, hoping he'd take the hint. He didn't. Even as I walked away, I could feel his presence, lingering. He was still standing there, watching me. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. The next day, I went to my locker again, and there he was, this time standing directly in front of it, blocking it. I stopped in my tracks. My stomach tightened. "Can you move?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Instead of answering, he smiled. "So you sure you don't want to hang out?" He said my name. I hadn't told him my name. A shiver ran through me, but I kept my expression neutral. "I don't know you. Can you please move?" He didn't move right away. His stare felt heavier this time, more expectant, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. Then thankfully, my friends showed up. One of them noticed the situation and spoke up. "Hey man, she asked you to move." Something flickered in his expression. Annoyance, amusement? Either way, he finally stepped aside. I grabbed my books and left without another word. I asked my friends if they knew who he was. None of them had seen him before. We assumed he was just some senior being weird. I told myself he'd lose interest and move on. I was wrong. After school, I stopped by my locker one last time before heading home, and there he was, again. This time, he didn't even pretend to make small talk. Need a ride home? I felt my heart hammer. I never told him how I got home. No, I didn't linger this time. I turned on my heel and walked away, fast. That was the last time I saw him. At least, in person. A few weeks later, I found out why. One of my friends sent me a news article. A woman had been nearly kidnapped in our town. She fought back and got away. The man who tried to take her was caught. And there in the article was his mugshot. He wasn't a senior. He wasn't even a student. He was 23 years old. He had been lurking around the school, targeting multiple girls. One of them finally reported him after he followed her into a restroom. That's when they realized he wasn't supposed to be there at all. I stared at his picture, feeling my stomach twist. If I had said yes, if I had gotten in his car, what would have happened to me? I still don't know, and I don't want to. Back in high school, I used to walk to and from school every day. As a freshman and sophomore, I didn't have a driver's license, and I wasn't a fan of riding the bus. Thankfully, our house was close enough that walking was an easy option. The route was simple, just a few sidewalks through a quiet residential neighborhood. Mornings were peaceful, with barely any cars on the road at 7 a.m. I liked it that way. That morning started like any other. The air was still, the streets silent, except for the occasional hum of a distant vehicle. I was about halfway to school when I noticed the sound of a car approaching from behind. At first, I paid no attention. Cars passed by all the time, but something about this one felt different. The car slowed down, not in the way a car normally does when preparing for a turn or stop sign. No, this was deliberate, measured, like it was watching me. It pulled over. I stopped walking for just a second, my pulse quickening as the driver's window rolled down. Behind the wheel sat a man. He looked average, mid-40s, dark hair, clean-shaven, but something about his smile felt off. Need a ride to school? He asked casually. I didn't, and even if I had, I knew better than to accept rides from strangers. No thanks, I said, my voice steady but firm. The man hesitated, then chuckled. Come on, it's a long walk. I can drop you off. I shook my head. No, I'm fine. This time, his smile faded slightly. Without another word, he put the car into drive and pulled away. I stood there for a moment, watching his taillights disappear around the corner. Was he just being friendly, or was there something more sinister behind his offer? I tried to shake it off, but that evening I got my answer. After school, I walked home as usual. The day had been normal, uneventful. I'd almost forgotten about the man until I heard the low rumble of a car engine approaching from behind. I didn't turn around at first. It was just another car, right? But as it neared, a chill ran down my spine. It was him, the same car, the same man, the same slow crawl as he matched my pace. His window rolled down again. Hey, he said, his voice unnervingly casual. Still don't want to ride? My heart pounded against my ribs. This wasn't a coincidence. I didn't answer. I just kept walking, my pace quickening. The car rolled forward slowly, as if he was waiting for me to change my mind. When I finally reached my street, he gave a small nod and drove off. I should have told someone then. I should have told my mom, a teacher, anyone. But for some reason, I convinced myself that it was over. I was wrong. The next morning, I left my house with a gnawing sense of unease. Halfway to school, a car drove past me. My stomach dropped. It was him. I felt his eyes on me as he passed. I told myself that was it, that he would keep driving, but he didn't. The car pulled over. This time, he didn't just slow down. He stopped. The engine turned off. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Was he going to get out? No way. I wasn't going to wait and find out. Without thinking, I darted into the nearest yard. I hopped a small fence, ran through the backyard, then cut through another property. I didn't stop. I zigzagged through unfamiliar streets, making sure I wasn't being followed. My heart pounded, adrenaline pushing me forward. By the time I reached the school, I was gasping for breath. I called my mom, I told my friends, and this time, I didn't brush it off. That afternoon, I didn't walk home. My friend Amanda let me ride the bus with her, and my mom picked me up from her house. That night, we contacted the school, and from that day forward, I took the bus every morning and afternoon. A few months later, I got my driver's license. I never walked to school again, and thankfully, I never saw that man again. But sometimes, when I think about it, I wonder what would have happened if I had gotten into that car. High school reunions are supposed to be fun. Nostalgic nights filled with old friends, laughter, and reminiscing about the past. But when you have a history with someone like Tyler, the past isn't always something you want to revisit. My high school wasn't big, maybe 200 students per grade. That meant everyone knew each other, at least on some level. My best friend Julia and I decided to go together, both of us eager but slightly nervous about seeing old classmates. The reunion was being held at a small banquet hall in town, and by the time we arrived, the place was buzzing with familiar faces. For a while, everything felt normal. I laughed with people I hadn't seen in years, caught up on where life had taken them. But then I felt it, that familiar, sickening drop in my stomach, a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there he was, Tyler. The last time we'd spoken, it had ended in threats. He used to send me texts saying he knew where I lived when my parents weren't home. He had come to my house once, throwing rocks at my window until my dad chased him off. He was obsessive, possessive, and unstable. When word got out about his behavior, people distanced themselves from him. I never thought I'd have to see him again. And yet, here he was, standing in front of me. "Hey," he said, his voice unsettlingly calm. "Can we talk?" I felt the room shrink around me. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "There's nothing to talk about, Tyler," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I hope you're doing well, but I have nothing to say." I turned to leave, his hand clamped onto my shoulder. "You're really gonna be like that?" His voice was lower now, almost a growl. I yanked away from his grip. "Let go of me." His eyes darted around the room. He didn't want a scene. After a moment, he muttered, all right," and walked away. But the night was ruined for me. I spent the rest of it making sure I never crossed his path again. Julia and I whispered about it with a few other girls, all of them agreeing. Tyler had always been a creep, someone we were better off without. At some point, I noticed he had disappeared. Maybe he left early. Good. After a few hours, Julia and I, along with a few other girls, left to go to a nearby dive bar. We stayed for another drink, and then Julia dropped me off at home. I lived alone now. As I walked up to my front door, headlights swept across my driveway. A car driving slowly down my quiet street. I turned my head just in time to see a Jeep Cherokee pass by. It could have been nothing, a coincidence, but something about it made my skin crawl. The next day, the feeling of unease still clung to me. Just to be safe, I checked Tyler's Instagram, private. I used my fake account. Yes, I have one for situations like this. He accepted the request almost immediately, but I saw nothing about a Jeep. Maybe I was overthinking it, maybe. Then came the message. A long, rambling DM from Tyler. Manipulative, obsessive, asking to see me, saying things like, "I know you're alone now. You need me." I blocked him. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The 1 a.m. visitor. That night, at exactly 1 a.m., my doorbell started ringing. Once, twice, over and over again. I jolted awake, heart racing. I stared at my bedroom door, frozen. Then the knocking started. Loud, angry pounds that shook the doorframe. Boom, boom, boom. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands. No messages, no missed calls, no way to know for sure, but I knew it was him. The knocking went on for what felt like forever. Then suddenly, Silent. I forced myself out of bed, my legs shaking, and crept toward the peephole. I held my breath as I looked outside. Nothing. No one. But that didn't mean he wasn't still out there. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I told Julia, who told her dad. He knew someone, a detective from our hometown. The detective came by, took pictures of the old messages and the DM from the night before. Then he made a call. A warning was given. The final warning. So far, it worked. But people like Tyler, they don't change. They just wait. And as the 10-year reunion approaches, one question lingers in my mind. Will he be there? Or worse, will he come back? High school reunions are supposed to be fun. Nostalgic nights filled with old friends, laughter, and reminiscing about the past. But when you have a history with someone like Tyler, the past isn't always something you want to revisit. My high school wasn't big, maybe 200 students per grade. That meant everyone knew each other, at least on some level. My best friend Julia and I decided to go together. Both of us eager but slightly nervous about seeing old classmates. The reunion was being held at a small banquet hall in town, and by the time we arrived, the place was buzzing with familiar faces. For a while, everything felt normal. I laughed with people I hadn't seen in years, caught up on where life had taken them. But then I felt it, that familiar, sickening drop in my stomach, a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there he was, Tyler. The last time we'd spoken, it had ended in threats. He used to send me texts saying he knew where I lived when my parents weren't home. He had come to my house once, throwing rocks at my window until my dad chased him off. He was obsessive, possessive, and unstable. When word got out about his behavior, people distanced themselves from him. I never thought I'd have to see him again. And yet, here he was, standing in front of me. "Hey," he said, his voice unsettlingly calm. "Can we talk?" I felt the room shrink around me. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "There's nothing to talk about, Tyler," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I hope you're doing well, but I have nothing to say." I turned to leave, his hand clamped onto my shoulder. "You're really gonna be like that?" His voice was lower now, almost a growl. I yanked away from his grip. "Let go of me." His eyes darted around the room. He didn't want a scene. After a moment, he muttered, all right, and walked away. But the night was ruined for me. I spent the rest of it making sure I never crossed his path again. Julia and I whispered about it with a few other girls, all of them agreeing. Tyler had always been a creep, someone we were better off without. At some point, I noticed he had disappeared. Maybe he left early. Good. After a few hours, Julia and I, along with a few other girls, left to go to a nearby dive bar. We stayed for another drink, and then Julia dropped me off at home. I lived alone now. As I walked up to my front door, headlights swept across my driveway. A car driving slowly down my quiet street. I turned my head just in time to see a Jeep Cherokee pass by. It could have been nothing, a coincidence, but something about it made my skin crawl. The next day, the feeling of unease still clung to me. Just to be safe, I checked Tyler's Instagram, private. I used my fake account. Yes, I have one for situations like this. He accepted the request almost immediately, but I saw nothing about a Jeep. Maybe I was overthinking it, maybe. Then came the message. A long, rambling DM from Tyler. Manipulative, obsessive, asking to see me, saying things like, "I know you're alone now. You need me." I blocked him. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The 1 a.m. visitor. That night, at exactly 1 a.m., my doorbell started ringing. Once, twice, over and over again. I jolted awake, heart racing. I stared at my bedroom door, frozen. Then the knocking started. Loud, angry pounds that shook the doorframe. Boom, boom, boom. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands. No messages, no missed calls. No way to know for sure, but I knew it was him. The knocking went on for what felt like forever. Then suddenly, silent. I forced myself out of bed, my legs shaking, and crept toward the peephole. I held my breath as I looked outside. Nothing. No one. But that didn't mean he wasn't still out there. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I told Julia, who told her dad. He knew someone, a detective from our hometown. The detective came by, took pictures of the old messages and the DM from the night before. Then he made a call. A warning was given. The final warning. So far, it worked. But people like Tyler, they don't change. They just wait. And as the 10-year reunion approaches, one question lingers in my mind. Will he be there? Or worse, will he come back? I had been seeing this girl, Phoebe, for a few weeks. We'd met on a dating app, gone out twice, first for drinks, then on a night out with my friend. She was 4 years older than me, but that didn't seem like a big deal. My friends had neutral opinions of her. They said she was nice, but a little too quiet. I'd later learn they were holding back what they really thought. One night, Phoebe invited me to her high school reunion. She didn't want to go alone, and honestly, after she spent time with my friends, I felt like I owed her. The party was set for a random Saturday in the fall. It wasn't a school-organized event. She told me it was being hosted by some rich guy from her class at his house. I hadn't been to my own high school reunion yet, but I assumed they were usually held at bars or catering halls. When we arrived, the house was massive, gated driveway, huge windows, pristine landscaping. Yet something felt off. No fancy cars in the driveway, no sign of the host. Maybe he parked in the garage? The second we stepped inside, I felt it. Eyes. A room full of people staring directly at me. Not at Phoebe, at me. A few people came up and hugged Phoebe, then turned their attention to me. Their questions were relentless. Not the usual small talk, these were personal, almost intrusive. Where did I grow up? Who do I live with? What do I do all day? It felt less like conversation and more like an interrogation. Phoebe eventually pulled me away. But every new group we spoke to acted the same way, and something else was nagging at me. These people didn't look 28. Some looked well into their 30s, even early 40s. Are you sure you remember all these people? I asked Phoebe quietly. Yes, she answered a little too quickly. I nodded, still uneasy. So, where's the host? She hesitated. Haven't seen him yet. That struck me as odd. If this guy had thrown together such an elaborate reunion, wouldn't he be around, welcoming guests? More eyes, more whispering. The feeling that I wasn't supposed to be here was gnawing at my gut. I'm gonna hit the bathroom, I muttered to Phoebe. In reality, I just needed to step away, take a breath, think. I locked myself inside the bathroom, gripping the sink, staring at my reflection. My stomach was in knots. I texted my friends. This party is so weird. How do I get Phoebe to leave? I had barely been in there a minute when my phone buzzed. Phoebe, where are you? Bathroom, give me a sec. This party is really weird. I'm down to leave soon. Silence for a moment. Then, why? I frowned. Everyone's acting weird. Before she could respond, someone knocked on the door. I took a deep breath, washed my hands, and stepped out. A man stood there, one of the few people who actually looked around my age. But his expression was serious. His voice was even lower. You should leave, he murmured. That girl isn't who she says she is. I froze. Phoebe? He let out a short, humorless chuckle. Whatever she told you her name is. My mouth felt dry. What is this party? He tilted his head slightly, studying me. Then he smirked. Do these people look like they're at a high school reunion? I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He leaned in slightly. Trust me, he whispered. Leave, sooner than later. Then without another word, he walked into the bathroom and shut the door behind him. For a few seconds, I just stood there, heart pounding, mind racing. Everything, every strange look, every invasive question, every too-old face, suddenly felt very, very wrong. I turned and walked toward the door. Not too fast, not too slow, trying to act natural, but I felt it. Their eyes on me, like I had been selected for something, and now I was ruining it by leaving. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and kept walking, not looking back. I got in my car and drove away. Phoebe texted me, "Where did you go?" I didn't answer. When I got home, I searched her number on white pages. It wasn't registered to a Phoebe. The name that came up was Claire Foster. I stared at the screen, rereading it over and over. The address didn't match where I had picked her up either. I realized she had always been waiting outside when I picked her up, never inside the house. I finally responded. I had to leave. I'm sorry. Then I blocked her number. When I told my friends, they joked that it sounded like something out of Get Out. They admitted they had felt something off about her from the start, but didn't want to ruin things for me. My family had their own theories. Some thought I exaggerated the whole thing, but then I mentioned the fake name, the warning from the stranger, the party that felt less like a reunion and more like a gathering. To this day, I don't know what I walked into. I just know one thing. I wasn't supposed to leave.